This is a video to go over the Cumulative AP Practice Test number 3 on page 669 in your textbook. You should take about 60 minutes to do the first 30 multiple choice questions, and when you're done, you should resume this video to go over the answers. The solutions are in the back, but this video is going to go over what chapter each of the answers is taught about. So take a minute, pause the video, make sure you're done with the first 30 questions. Okay, so question number one is from chapter 6, and it's actually a geometric distribution. And in a geometric distribution, you're looking for, the question is, what is the probability that she will not get a hit until her 4th time at bat? So again, what that means is her first time at bat, she doesn't hit the ball. The second time at bat, she doesn't hit the ball. The third time at bat, she doesn't hit the ball, but the 4th time she does. And so if you look at the multiple choice options, you are looking for the situation that has the probability listed that way, and that would be letter E. Question number 2. Question number 2 is actually from chapter 5. These are some probability rules. And actually, I'm going to use a formula from your formula sheet. The probability of A given B equals the probability of A and B divided by the probability of B. So this is a conditional probability. And in this particular problem, they're asking you, what's the probability that Handy Me Dandy wins, given the track conditions are good? So again, probability of Candy Me Dandy wins, and again, that symbol means and, so I kind of think of it looking like an A. And the track conditions are good, divided by the probability the track conditions are good. They give you this probability in the problem. They tell you that is 0.6. They don't give you the probability of CW or Candy Me Dandy wins and good, but they do give you the probability the track conditions are good, and that is 80 or 0.85. So just based on that information, the only thing that you can find is the probability of Candy Me Dandy winning and the track conditions are being good. And you do that by multiplication. But the question in number 2 asks for the or statement, not the and statement. So that's why multiple choice part E is given. One of the questions that was asked by a classmate said, well, what information would you know or need to know to answer this question? Again, using your formula sheet, the or probability is probability of A or B. Looks like the probability of A plus the probability of B minus the probability of A and B. So what you would need to do to find the probability that Color Me Dandy wins or the track conditions are good is you need to know the probability of Color Me Dandy wins plus the probability the track conditions are good minus the probability of Color Me Dandy and good track conditions. This is the only one that you don't know, and that's why you don't have enough information. Question 3 comes next. Question 3 is from chapter 8. Chapter 8, you talked about confidence intervals, and they're talking about really a margin of error. And MO is my abbreviation for margin of error. And because it's about proportions, we know our critical value is Z. And for proportions, this would be P times 1 minus P all over N. So when they talk about no more than 2%, that means you want this to be less than or equal to 2%. Because the confidence level is 90, if your confidence level is 90, that means your critical value, your Z, is 1.645. You use your calculator. And then what do you plug in for P? We talked about if you don't have a P to be conservative, you use 0.5, and then you have to solve for N. N turns out to be greater than or equal to 1,691.26, and the only problem that is, or listed answer that is greater than that, or you're always looking for the one that is the smallest number, just greater than this, would be letter D. So we have E, E, and D for the first 3. Next question is question 4. Question 4 is really a question from chapter 2. In chapter 2, we learned about normal probabilities. And again, they're giving you the mean and they're giving you the standard deviation. The mean is 2.5. The standard deviation is 0.6. And they want to know in question number 4, one of those intervals is 81. Again, you could add your 0.6 and see like, oh, that's how they got sort of those numbers that are listed in here. If you went from here to here, this would be 68. If you go 2 standard deviations above, that's why there's a 3.7 and a 1.3. That would be 95. So your 81% interval would theoretically be somewhere between those two numbers. And that turns out to be, well, it's going to turn out to be letter C. Hard to figure out if you're just using the empirical rule. So I would actually use the normal CDF button on my calculator. If I'm going to use the normal CDF button on my calculator, again, that second vars, normal CDF is number 2. And then what I'm going to do is I can type in each of those values. So if I look at letter A is 0.7 up to 3.1. Oops, and I need to change my mean. My mean was 3.5 and my standard deviation was 0.6. And it's looking up at that Z table for you. That's too big. So again, I can repeat that either by doing second vars, going to normal CDF. Again, letter B is 1.3 to 3.7, mean is 2.5, standard deviation is 0.6. I check to see what that one is. Repeat again, normal CDF, I can do letter C, 1.9 to 3.7. And when I do this one, that's how you see that it's 81%, and that's why it's letter B, or sorry, letter C. And again, that's from chapter 2. Question number 5. Question number 5 is chapter 9. Chapter 9 was, again, talking about power and pieces, and that would just be letter D. The ways that you increase power are decrease type 2, increase N, and increase alpha. Question 6 is from chapter 4, and it's just recognizing that your sampling methods are not correct, and in that one it's letter D. Sorry if you couldn't see all of the notes that I wrote. Here are all the notes that I wrote for questions 5 and 6. We're just going to go through 2 more questions. Question number 7. Question number 7 is from chapter 6. It's a two content question. It's binomial situation as well as combining random variables. The first part is binomial because you have to figure out what is the expected number of, in this case, silver candy wrappers. So you have holiday 1, and again, you're going to do NP to figure out the expected value. We sometimes refer to that as mean. So there are 40 candy wrappers, 30% are silver, and that gives you what, 12? And then for the holiday, I think it's called holiday 2, yep, holiday 2, the expected value again is NP for silver candy wrappers. That's 40% time, or 40 times 50%, and that's 20. So you're going to expect to have 32 silver wrappers. And it's easy to combine random variables for means. You just add their means. If you're talking about their standard deviations, so standard deviation for holiday 1 is, again, it's binomial, is n times p times 1 minus p. And so that would be the 40 times 0.3 times 0.7. Again, standard deviation for holiday 2 is the same thing, 40 times 0.5 times 0.5. But if you want to find their combined standard deviation, you have to add their variances and then square root it. And so when you do that, you get the 4.29. And that's why your answer to number 7 is letter C. The last question to this video is number 8. Number 8 comes from chapter 8, and it's just asking you what happens when you increase your confidence interval. When you increase your confidence interval from 95 to 98, it should get wider. And then as it gets wider, talking about precision again, you're talking about how well is it doing it. Because it's wider, it's less precise. So that's why number 8 is letter A. So for day 1, make sure you've, again, finished all 30. This video just goes through the first 8. There'll be subsequent videos that go through the remaining questions. Actually, I'm trying to think, how far did we get in our class? We actually made it through question 12. So this video is going to go through question 12 because that's what we did in class on Thursday. Question number 9 is from chapter 1, and you should always use a histogram when you have large data, large sample sizes. The other ones work better when you have smaller sample sizes. Question number 10 is actually from chapter 7. It's about sampling distributions. They give you mu of x is 3.5 and the standard deviation of x is 1.7. And then they tell you that you're doing your die 100 times. So transformationally, that now means my new, I'm going to call it n, is now 350, and my standard deviation for new is now, oops, not 5, 1, is 171. And they're asking what's the probability that the total score is at least, probability that your total score is at least 375. And so what we're going to do is we're just really going to calculate a z-score. Again, n is greater than, n is 100, n is greater than 30, so we know that it's going to be normal, and you're just going to do 375 minus 350 divided by the standard deviation, which turns out to be 171 divided by the square root of 100. We're using the sampling distribution mean of this. And then we plug that in, and you're going to get a z-score. The z-score turns out to be about 1.46. Again, you look that up in your table. You're looking for 1.46, and they want to know what's the probability that it's greater than 375, and that turns out to be letter C, or 0.0721. So this is letter C for number 10. The last two questions are question number 11. Question number 11 again comes from chapter 4. It's asking you which one of those are true. Anytime they list something as different, they say the fields are different, that's when you're going to create a block for that. If you think things are different, if men and women are different, that's what you block on. If genders are different, that's what you block on. So the fields are different, so that's what we block on. And it turns out to be letter B because each field gets the treatment of seeds. And the last question for this video is question 12, chapter 3. It's talking about correlation. Again, correlation has no label. So if it has no label, then it doesn't matter if you change it from feet to inches or inches to feet, it's still going to be letter C. So again, that's the first 12 of the multiple choice. There'll be another video coming up on the next day, probably, that goes over the next few questions in this. But you should do all 30. Again, check your answers in the back of the book, and then check these videos for explanations and references to what chapter. Thank you.